5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. As always, I'm your host, Mike Murray. Today, I finally got him. My college coach, Coach Bob Clemmer, the head coach at St. Lawrence University. Bob has coached at many different levels in the sport, including club, college, master swimming. He's done it all, learned to swim programs. And I am so fortunate to have you on. Coach, welcome to the Coaches Corner today.
Well, of course, it's my pleasure, Mike, anytime I get a chance to talk with you.
Yeah, I just had to talk you into it for about 6 weeks. Coach, today we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to both of our hearts and something that we've kind of leaned into as a strength in our career, and that's distance and IM-based training, both for age group swimmers, senior swimmers, and then into the collegiate ranks. You've had so much experience in the sport, and you understand how the dynamic has changed a lot over the years. So I'm interested into getting into that topic, but I do want to talk a little bit about your journey in the sport. We like to hear from all our guests about how they got involved and their unique passion for how swimming developed. So let's learn a little bit about what Coach Bob Clemmer had in store for swimming growing up as a kid.
Oh, my God. I'm going to cut through the chase here. That the first real influence I had as a swimmer, I grew up in the center of the universe, which is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which I think everybody realizes that. And I had the opportunity to be coached by Paul Bergen. And he really was instrumental in me being here today. I think he really was the first coach that really showed me what hard work was all about. 12 practices a week was kind of interesting for a guy that started at the age of 13. But anyway, no, I mean, he really opened my eyes up to really what swimming was all about. And I think I not only based a lot of what I've done in my career on the things that he philosophically held true. But right after Coach Bergen left Philadelphia Aquatic Club, he went down to Nashville Aquatic Club. And of course, everybody realized he hit it out of the park down there with Tracy Calkins and Nick Nevitt and all those cats down there. And I had the additional honor of being coached by Mike Burton after Coach Bergen left. And Mike had a different kind of an approach to training. And that's really where I really got a flavor for distance-based training, where Coach Bergen, well, I was a breaststroker and all, but Coach Bergen trained me a much different way than Mike did. But it wasn't just about how he trained me, it's who he was. And of course, we all know about his Olympic gold medals in '68 and '72. And having conversations with him, he really gave us, the swimmers that he coached, an understanding about, for lack of a better way of saying it, being rough and tough, And so those two guys really got me going, And then I went to Pitt, hail to Pitt, and Fred Lewis was my coach there. Even though I went there as a breaststroker, I think because of the background that I had in training, Freddie assimilated me into his distance program. So that was really cool. And then after that, I was on my way. Coach Dick Bradshaw was the head coach then, and he gave me my first opportunity to coach, and so grateful to him. But I spent several years in the Pittsburgh area, mainly coaching club, and I had the good fortune of coaching some really really successful swimmers there, you know. So I didn't screw it up. So that was always good, you know. And then I think my other great mentor, I had the opportunity to go to the University of Virginia and work alongside Mark Bernardino. And I credit him with a substantial amount of not just giving me the opportunity. He had me as his distance coach, and he gave me that opportunity to coach a lot of the talent that was on that team, you know, Pete Wright, Bill Smythe, and many others, you know. We had some really talented athletes, you know, and Mark gave me that opportunity, as well as, let's just say, he grew me up, you know. He gave me a lot of professional maturity that I'm so grateful for, you know. And you know, I think that he's one of the great coaches, you know, of our generation too. So that's kind of my background.
Well, that's quite a name, quite a list of names of coaches that you've either worked with or worked for. And I've come across the good fortune of meeting almost all of them and sharing stories about a young Bob Clemmer coming up in the business. And, you know, we
Talk about any of those, Mike.
well, one of the things that's kind of unique to our story together is that, you know, as your athlete and as one of your assistants, you gave me my first start in the business. And, you know, the greatest athlete that I have been fortunate to coach, in Michaela Sargent, everything that she did came from you as an age grouper growing up, which was based a lot off of the things that you did with Mark Bernardino. And then here she is, you know, all these years later, having tremendous success swimming for Dino. So the swimming world is a small world, and you always taught us that as young assistants. One of the things that I'm most grateful for, Coach, is, you know, when I was in college at St. Lawrence, and there were times before I went to practice, I'd go to your office for about an hour, and it was like swim coaching 101. Why is the mentorship so important this day and age? And as an ASCA board member, I really try to incorporate this into Coach's Corner. Why is it so important for great coaches to make sure that they're creating space and opportunities for their young assistants?
I think that's one of the important things that they do, you know. I think it's a responsibility that they have, of not just giving the assistant coaches on their staff a group to coach, but really to be able to give them as much information as they have, you know. And as you've heard me say countless times before, I'm not an innovator. You know, I took the information and the sharing that all the great coaches have done over the decades, you know. And that's one of the great things about our country, is that how sharing the great coaches are, you know. And I think that that's really important, you know. And hell, man, I made as many mistakes as the next guy. And so I want to share those mistakes too, you know, in hopes that, you know, the coaches that are with me and a part of the program don't make those same mistakes, you know. I mean, I think that that's really important.
For sure. And when I think about some of the tenets of your program and the way that you develop your philosophy as we get into the discussion on IM-based training and distance-based training, there's one phrase that stands out to me that you said all the time, and now we say it at Victor Swim Club all the time, which is speed through endurance.
Mhm.
How did you come up with that approach, and why do you think that that's so important in developing athletes?
Well, I think that you have to have an aerobic base, you know, and I apologize for using Neanderthal terminology here, Mike, you know. But I think that, you know, all the great coaches, you know, they're distance-based programs, you know, whether it be at, you know, like at some stage in somebody's career, you have to be able to lay that base, And I always remember seeing the pyramiding, where the base of the pyramid is always aerobic endurance, and great coaches like Coach Schulberg and Coach Schubert and Coach Urbanchek, Coach Troy. Learned a lot from Coach Troy, I mean, those guys are all distance-based programs. I don't think anybody would say that that they were a mild training program, So I mean, they really, make sure that they establish that. You establish how to train too. You teach your swimmers how to train. It's really important for them to be able to pay attention. I think that's a lot what. Where toughness comes from, mental toughness comes from is discipline, and discipline just comes from paying attention, knowing what your splits are in practice, and swimming swims the right way as far as splits are concerned,
One thing that I always took away from you is how important precision is on sets. You have a famous saying where you would say negative split by time, don't negative split by feel. Descend by time, don't descend by feel. And so as a young club coach, when you were in the Pittsburgh area, you had the good fortune of having some pretty talented athletes at the time in Melanie Buttermeyer, Mike Kozlina. What did those great athletes teach you about IM and distance-based training as a young club coach just coming up?
Well, those swimmers that you quoted were all 100, 200 swimmers, Of course, Mel would probably argue with me that she wasn't a 200 flyer, but that's where she got her only national championship. So I don't know, but, I mean, that's just the way it is, I mean, they were real smart kids, and coming from Pittsburgh, and not to say this is the only area, but it still was a blue collar environment, and those kids had parents that were just really rock solid, and so they had that discipline coming from home. So it made my task a lot easier, and I was probably a lot more vocal during that phase of my career. But I think, I think that's really important that they were just like that. As I had said before, I mean, we used up all the minutes of our practice, let's put it that way. So, and they were very cooperative, and I was blessed having those swimmers on. I mean, they were just so talented. I mean, it was my job not to screw it up, you know what I mean? But they were, as long as I did right by them, they were just going to really light it up. And, they were really a great bunch of swimmers.
You told me about some of those practices where the guys on the team would try to beat each other to the wall, climb out, and then lay down like they were relaxing.
Yeah, that's a good story. That actually came from a tremendous swimmer, a very successful swimmer back in the 60s and early 70s in Philly. Gary Plantier was his name. And I always remember it. I mean, he was at a state, winning all the trophies and all that kind of stuff, going to nationals at 13 and stuff, which was kind of unheard of for a guy. But he would always, as soon as he finished his race, he was immediately jumping out of the water. He didn't stick around. It was kind of cool how he did that. That was kind of his signature move. And I had Mike Kozlina and another great swimmer, Marty Moran, and actually there was a couple other guys, that would knock heads, and they worked so hard to the last part of the repeat so that they could get out of the water before the other guy touched, and looked like they were lounging, and said, what took you so long? I mean, it got to a point where I had to say, you guys are getting pretty close to hurting yourself getting out of the water, because, the starting block was there and that kind of thing. But that was really cool watching that kind of stuff.
Talk to younger coaches, Bob, because I think some of this is getting missed out in the development of young coaches. Talk about why competitiveness in practice is okay, and having a sense of humor about being competitive is important.
Well, they call it competitive swimming, right? I mean, that's what they call it, not participation swimming. And your teammates are as every bit influence and could contribute to your success as much as what you do. You know, you're looking at swimming where it's all about time. And I think that if you're paying attention to racing with the other person, I think that you're paying a little bit less attention to how you feel. And I think that that's really beneficial because you can only think about one thing at once, right? So you might as well think about the things that are going to make you good. And so that's one of the things that I've always said that is really beneficial. Know what to pay attention to, right? So be a good coach in the water, that kind of thing.
I really appreciated that outlook as an athlete. We used to have a lot of fun on certain sets. My teammates will tell you that there was a particular mid-semester break workout where you were really challenging a few of us, and the Rocky soundtrack was playing in the background, and we had a lot of fun with that. And that's right. Coach, so here you are, you're a young club coach, and Melanie Buttermeyer makes her first national team, and now you're on the national team staff. What are you learning about distance-based and IM training? Who are you going to at that time as a young coach to find out how to invigorate your program with that approach?
I'm going to have to pause you on that one because Mel made the world championship team before she came to me. Al Rose in Pittsburgh, and he was a great coach, and he had a lot of great swimmers. So she actually made her first international trip with Al, but then she moved over. We had a lot more swimmers at the national level that she could train with, and I think that that's kind of where she moved over. Al was more of because of his at the time he was training out of I want to say it might have been a 20-yard pool at the Jewish Community Center, but I might be wrong about that. But he was really restricted, and I was fortunate enough to coach at a 6-lane 50-meter pool at Chartiers Valley High School. Actually, it was. So I was able to do a lot more and had a lot more room. When those early years of coaching, the background that I quoted to you before is what kind of influenced me in the training that I presented. And plus, I wasn't always able to go to the ASCA World Clinics back then, and I think they could probably do it now, but are still doing it now. But there used to be, the internet wasn't around back then. So I used to buy the world yearbooks, and I used to read all the lectures, of George Haynes and Doc Councilman and all those cats. I used to read about, the lectures that they gave, and that really helped me formulate Ed Spencer. And of course, I don't know if I mentioned Coach Schubert. He was a big influence in what I did, but I used to read those things, and that really helped me out as far as what I did and how I did it. Did I answer your question?
You did, absolutely. And when you got to some national team trips, who were you leaning into?
What do you mean?
Like who were like guys who were on the staff or women who were on the staff that you developed some?
It's kind of funny that my first national team experience was with the national A team. They had a training camp, and it was at University of North Carolina. I was fortunate enough to be on that staff. Jay Fitzgerald was the head coach there. Bud McAllister, hopefully you younger guys know some of these guys, right? Bud McAllister was awesome. He had a young Janet Evans with him. And there was there was a few Olympians there actually, but Whitney Hedgepath, who was coached by Duncan, God, I can't remember his last name, out of Virginia. They were knocking heads. I remember Bud coming over and saying that they did a set of 200 IMs and every one of them was under the senior cut, which back then it was pretty impressive. I mean, it blew my socks off. I'll tell you that right now. There was a guy there, and this was just around the time that lactate analyzing was hitting the scene, named Dr. Jack Daniels. And Jack was he's a Hall of Fame running coach, and he wrote, I don't know how many books. I don't know. He won like a whole bunch, like 8 or 9 NCAA championships at Cortland State. Well, he was there running the lactate analyzing, where you get a little bit of blood and you stick it in the thing and it analyzes it and that. Well, he came up with this formula for swimming where, by measuring the levels of lactate in the blood and all that kind of stuff. I apologize for not sounding too scientific, but and he came up with this formula of taking the swimmer's best time and being able, through percentages, of figuring out how fast they should train for max VO training, aerobic endurance training, and that kind of stuff. So it was really a godsend for me at the time, and it gave me my first opportunity to coach Schulberg swimmers. Like Dave Wharton was there, Erica Hansen was there, Kathy Hetchie, Jeff Pryor. There was just a boatload of talent coming out of Coach Schulberg's program, And it was over the holidays. It was from like December the 26th through January. I don't know. It was something like 3rd or 4th. And Coach Schulberg allowed his group to come down as long as they did a 16,000 IM for time on New Year's Day. So that was kind of interesting, And of course, everybody has heard the kind of monster, mental challenge things that Coach Schulberg used to do. I coached a lot of the GA kids at UVA, 25,000 for time and all that kind of neat stuff. So
there's something to be said for that. I remember you talking about that with us as young athletes. And I remember one athlete, who will go nameless, said, well, Coach, that's just garbage yardage. And you said, well, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Did that young swimmer listen to me?
I think eventually, yes.
Yeah, I think he did just fine for himself. You, Mike, real proud of you.
Well, a lot of what I do is what you did, and a lot of what you did is what Coach Schulberg did, and we've done some things like that, and it certainly helped athletes become more successful. And certainly, from a confidence standpoint, if you can do a 5,000 for time twice, when you go to an open water national championship, 10K is not very hard. You can go 4 1,600 IMs and descend them. Going the 400 IM 2 fly back to back isn't so bad. And when I came up with these ideas, a lot of it was based on a single videotape that you showed me once. And I don't know if you'll remember this, but you brought me in the office. I was complaining about having to go the 1,000 2 free back to back one time. And you said, I got to show you this. And it was the UNC versus UVA dual meet. It was going to be close. And Pete Wright swam the 1,000. I think he was close to breaking 9 minutes. And then went 140.1 in the 2 free minutes after finishing. And from that point on, there was nothing that I could say. And that brings us to a great point, because Pete Wright probably taught you the most about elite level swimming. You were on the 96 Olympic advisory staff. You coached Pete during that year with Mark. There's a famous test set progression that I use that you taught me. Talk a little bit about Pete Wright, the training that you gave him, and his eventual spot on the Olympic team.
Well, first of all, from a coaching standpoint, all the credit goes to John Carroll. John Carroll, when he was coaching at Jersey Wahoos, he coached Pete from the age of 12. And so Pete came to UVA with all the skills and all the tools because of Pete, extremely intelligent person, but both, you know, I mean, he's an engineer and all, but John was really, the huge bulk of the credit goes to John Carroll. I was just kind of the beneficiary of what they did. One of the things that Pete was relentless, you know, as far as in his training was concerned, and he was an extremely intelligent swimmer, you know, and it was a lot of fun with him. And one of the stories I think that you're talking about, every Tuesday afternoon, I would do a long distance swim. And then back then they didn't have digital clocks, or at least we weren't able to afford them. And so we had the old analog clocks, and Pete, he would pay attention to his 25-yard splits, right? Because if he didn't want to wait around even for the 50 to find, because we were in a short course pool then. UVA is a Taj Mahal now, but we were in a short course pool, and he would pay attention to the 25-yard splits so that he was able to make an adjustment if he started falling off the pace. Because we would take those times and base a lot of what our training was, you know, like the old T30. You know, I didn't do a T30. I did a 3,000 for time, because a lot of those cats could finish the 3,000 before 30 minutes. Pete, his average pace was like a 56 low, like a 56.2. That was pretty good back then. And so that's what we did for that. And I based a lot of my expectations and goals as far as a lot of the other stuff that we did from an aerobic standpoint based on that T30. And of course we got that from, a lot of the credit there goes to Coach Banchek and Coach Bergen too, with the T30 stuff. You know, I was doing that stuff back in Pittsburgh for a little bit, but not really applying it as much as I did at UVA with all those great distance swimmers I was fortunate enough to coach.
You know, the test set progression that a lot of people use now is what I learned from you. I've been very fortunate to be asked by USA Swimming to put it together, and it gets a lot of downloads every year, and a lot of people are using it, but it's really yours. So the way that we set it up at Victor is based off of what we did at St. Lawrence, because I saw the progression with my teammates. And you were nice to me. You only made me go through it maybe once or twice this season, because I still thought I was a sprinter. But you started off, we would go 6 500s, and then we would go 3 1000s. And the next week we'd go 2 1500s. We'd go a timed 3000, like you just mentioned. And then you'd cap it off with a mile for time. And boy, by the time we got to that mile for time, and this is still true in our program, and we just did a T 1500 because we're short course meters right now. We see a lot of best times, even throughout the season.
Awesome.
Is that something that, you know, you tried one time and then you said, hey, look, like this really works? And you actually, and I'll let you talk about it, you actually have the same type of progression for the IM. So if you want to talk about it, jump right in.
Okay. Well, if you want me to. A lot of that came from Coach Bergen. And you've heard me say that when the cycling, you know, cycling your program, and Tudor Bumpa was the Yugoslav physiologist, I guess, that put that together way back when. And pyramid 4-week cycle where you build up for the first 3 weeks, and then the 4th week you have what I would always call a regeneration week, because I hated to use the word recovery because it gave the swimmers a false idea about what we wanted to accomplish. And each of those weeks at UVA, it was primarily, you know, a little bit at Pitt, but at UVA primarily is what I did that with, is just about every day we were doing something that they were going to see 4 weeks later. Like on Monday, I like to do Max VO work with them. And it would start off with sets of hundreds, usually about, I think it was like on about the 150. Then the second week, it was sets of 4 125s. You know, it always added up to like $2,000 for the main set, because we were cranking it out at like 10 grand, 11 grand to practice then. Those kids could take it. And then the third week was 150s. Now, I tell you that because then on Thursday, we did another max VO at longer distances. And the pace that they established on Monday is what the pace that their goal was on Thursday. Let me see, we did broken twos on the first week, 300s on the second week, and then 500s on the third week. Now that was a set I really enjoyed because even Pete failed that set, and it was hard to give him something that he couldn't succeed in, I swear to God. But what we did with those, it was like 6 500s on, I don't know what it was, something like 8 minutes or something, where the first 125 was at the pace that they established on the 12 150s on Monday. And then the rest of it had to be their T pace, right? And that was, everybody was able to do that, right? The second one was a little iffier, where they had to do a 250 at that 150 pace. And then the last 250 was at their T pace. And this is the one that crushed a lot of their spirits. The third one, they had to do a 375 at their 150 pace. And then the last 125 was their T pace. So that, I really like that one. And then on Tuesday is when we did the long distance stuff. We did what was it, depended on the year, like a 2,000 for time, and then the second week was a 3,000 for time, and then the third week was a 5,000 for time, and then the fourth week was a time, that was regeneration week, right? That was a timed mile, and then Fridays, in the afternoons, I always like to do a lot of pulling, I've changed that around a little bit after listening to Coach Eddie Reese saying that he liked to use Friday afternoons for sprinting because everybody was so gung-ho because it was Friday. And that made a lot of sense to me, but back in the day in the 90s when I was coaching UVA, I did it pulling, and then Wednesday and Saturday was a set that was made up of a lot of different things going through a couple of rounds of it, and like 800 IM, 4 200s free, some kicking stuff in there, just mixed it up. What my swimmers used to call a spaghetti set. So that's what that used to be. And all of my mornings were pretty much just IM too. So Wednesday and Saturday was IM training. And it gave me the opportunity of getting my 400 IMers to train with the other ones, the distance freestylers, but they would train IM stuff, and a lot of times the guys, their third event at ACCs was the 400 IM, Pete, Steve Warner, All-American from California. Those cats were doing 400 IMs and ACCs. And
Rojas.
Rob Rojas, yeah. Rob Rojas actually was a little bit more of a 400 IMer than he was a distance freestyler, you know what I mean? But he came from Mission Viejo. So I think Terry Stoddard was his coach. I don't think Coach Schubert was his coach. I think it was Terry Stoddard during that era, who obviously was a tremendous, one of the all-time greats too. But yeah, it was fun coaching Rob. So it was a great group. It really was. It was a great thing. And just sit back and, I was a little bit less flexible back then. I really wanted to stick to my program. I really wanted to follow through with it. And if it blew up and it was a smoking crater, then I would change it then. But fortunately, I was able to get through, a lot of those years. And there were some times it was kind of funny. Do you mind me going off on a tangent like this?
That's what this show's for.
Man, Dino was, well, first of all, he was a Philly boy, and there's a lot of us out there, like Jack Bowerly and, a lot of other cats that are out there. But Mike Parado. I should mention Mike. I mean, heck, I grew up with Mike. He was actually the first person I ever met in swimming. The first day I walked into PAC, Mike came over and introduced himself to me. So him and I have been buds for a long, long time. So anyway, getting back to it again, we always swam UNC toward the end of January, right? And I stuck to my program big time. And UNC was our big rival, Frank Comfort and Rich DeSelm were the coaches there, and they always had those kids swimming fast. But always drove Dino crazy because that was always the third week of my cycle. So I kicked the living crap out of him that week. And oh my God, because Dino was such a competitor, one of the great guys of all time for sure. But he's such a competitor. And it drove him crazy. I mean, words were exchanged sometimes with me, but we always pulled it out our, what's at the ACCs and at NCAA. So he forgave me. But from like January until NCAAs, I wasn't his best buddy during those weeks because, so anyway, so that's a story.
So Coach, you have all this success at the college level. You do some really great things. And then again, fortune has it, you run into another great athlete who you really helped develop into what he became when you moved to New Jersey Wave, and you have John Cole on your team, who eventually made a national team and still has the pool record at Harvard, by the way, from when he was swimming with you, 8:56 in the 1,000. Talk to me about what you learned in the college realm after being there for many years. How did you make adjustments to your distance and IM-based training when you had an athlete like John?
Well, I don't know necessarily it was because of making adjustments because of what John couldn't do. John he went to Harvard and he's a brilliant guy, just like Pete and a lot of the other cats, but it was the circumstances that we had at New Jersey Wave. It was a 6-lane, 25-yard pool, and the community college would only give us 2 hours. And so we had a jam. We had our top 12 and under age group in there, as well as the senior group. And I coached the senior group. And my assistant coach, a great guy, great coach, Ken O'Reilly. I think he's still there, isn't he? At New Jersey.
Well, it's now Scarlet.
Okay, Scarlet. Yeah. He took the top age group, and so we had to jam him in there. I mean, poor Ken had to jam a lot more people in those 2 lanes that I gave him then anyway. But John had to train with not only people that weren't able to swim as fast as him, but also sometimes he had to do things that the other kids in his lane weren't doing. They were doing a completely different set. But, he was such a great guy. He had great parents, Mr. and Mrs. Cole are great people. And John I had to kind of water it down a little bit. I couldn't give him the kind of program that I was given from UVA. He still did a hell of a job with it, really smart swimmer, fearless, totally polite kid. And then he went to Murph at Harvard, and Tim Murphy, who, as we know, is one of the all-time greats too. Murph was from Wilmington, Delaware, so it was kind of like a suburb of Philly. He got the gamma rays from Philly, so Murph got a little Philly in him, I guess. But Murph just coached him up big time. John just had a wonderful college career. I was really impressed.
Without a doubt. And, he obviously the skill development translated very well from what he was doing in your program when he went to go swim for Coach Murphy. And, one thing that kind of brings together every aspect of these athletes that you've talked about and these coaches that you've talked about is they all value toughness. And toughness is something in the contemporary coaching world that we're all very careful to talk about now. It's kind of like walking on eggshells in some ways, because we want to be really supportive and we want to support athletes' mental health and wellness. But toughness is a key ingredient in the development of strong people. Forget about athletes. So, you know, I needed toughness probably more than anybody. And I'm so fortunate to have learned those skills
Oh,
from you.
is this where I should be disagreeing with you, right? No, you were tough. Don't sell yourself short. You were tough, Mike.
But talk about why you talk about it so often in your program and why, above all other things, aside from athletic development, with the student athletes that you work with, you really do a great job of holding athletes accountable, holding them accountable for their own success, and teaching. You're not afraid to teach tough lessons in the face of a challenging educational environment. And talk to me about why that's so important.
Well, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, the world's not easy and it ain't getting any easier, man. So I think that it's good life skills to help them learn, teach it to them, they learn it, right? To help them learn how tough they can really be and what hard really is. And I think that if you put them in a position where their toughness is going to be tested, then and if they genuinely care about how successful a swimmer they're really going to be, they'll reach for that toughness and they'll surprise themselves with how tough they really are. I mean, it's all about whose hand touches the wall first, right? It's all about that, and so you want to, I mean, the last 10, as we saw in so many great races of our country, I love watching those races. It's so much fun, in not just the current group of champions, but also even as far back as like the 80s and that kind of thing. But the last 10 meters is just as important as any other. So you want them to be able to, not to be distracted by their fatigue level, because it's going to be there. So why pay attention to it? Because it's not going to help you. You want to be thinking about what's going to make you faster, not anything else. So that's why they call it practice, right? So you practice what you want to accomplish in the race. So you want to put them in that kind of environment, that kind of position.
There's no doubt about that. And something that, we want to hold our athletes accountable for this day and age is learning how to be a good teammate and learning how to be a good leader. What are some things that you do with your college team or that you did with club teams you coached in the past to cultivate leadership and teamwork?
Well, at the club level, it's just a little bit more challenging than at the collegiate level. I think it's not impossible, but it's just a little bit more because collegiately speaking, they're with each other 24/7, right? But I used to, in the club days, I used to take my best swimmers, my fastest swimmers, and impress upon them that they need to lead by example, and because their teammates are watching, you know. I was blessed by the fact that all my swimmers in the club level got along really, really well. They generally liked each other. There was no clunkers in the crowd, and thank you to moms and dads that made that happen. It made my job a lot simpler. At the collegiate level, I think that I never really was one about letting the swimmers pick the captains. I never really was big about that. Because they have to work with the coaches, they have to buy into the philosophy of what the program is, and I always thought that that was really important. You were a great captain at St. Lawrence University, by the way, one of the best. But really have always felt that captains shouldn't just be the cats that lead the cheer during the swimming meets. I really gave my captains responsibilities, physical responsibilities to do different things. And I thought I taught them about how to be a good leader, and I relied on them a lot too. They didn't want to know everything that was happening on campus. I didn't want to know that. I wanted to rely on my captains to tell me times that I needed to know things. And, but don't get me wrong. I mean, I always solicited the input of all the swimmers before appointing captains, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the season, because the first years, they don't know everybody yet, so I always relied on the people that were graduating and the varsity swimmers as far as who they wanted to be their leader. And we have one of those blogs that has a lot of different information on it from a training perspective, from a psychology, and we always dump our videos of the swimmers that we take monthly. We dump that in there too, so they can always look back on it if they need to, with or without a coach. Meets we would dump on there. But I also had this link to leadership and, just a laundry list of expectations, about how they should be. I can't remember where I got it from. I want to say it might have been Ed Spencer that might have came out with it. I think right around the time that he was at Nashville, maybe. What to do, what you should be doing as a freshman, what you should be doing as a sophomore, what you should be doing as a junior. I think that was about when he came out with that. And man, I followed that, I mean, it was a great way of having your swimmers evolve,
Sure, absolutely. I wanted to ask you this question because it's important for coaches' development, and this show is primarily for coaches' development and parent education. You are above all else a wonderful family man. You're a second father to me for sure. Talk to me about coaches balancing work life. It's becoming kind of work-life balance. The phrase is kind of becoming cliche, but it's so important in coaches understanding how to navigate a very busy lifestyle. Talk to me about some strategies that you used and what you've learned along the way.
I can only tell you what works for me. All right. That's all I can tell you. And I have two drop dead gorgeous daughters, my oldest daughter is 25 and my other daughter is 23. And mom did a great job of raising them, you know what I mean? But when I left University of Virginia, I didn't want my children's parents to be the daycare center. So what I did was, one of the things about going to the New Jersey Wave that I was able to do is I could coach morning practice, and we didn't own the pool, so I went home. So I was Mr. Mom during the day, and what a ball that was. And then my wife got off of work, and we were like two ships passing the night kind of thing, and then I went off to the second practice, and we did that for a couple of years. And then when we came to St. Lawrence University, Carol had a job working in the school system. She was what they call the opportunity room, which was basically where the teachers threw the kids that they didn't like. They threw them to Carol, but Carol did a great job because she didn't, the kids confided in her because, she didn't owe them anything, that kind of thing, or they didn't owe her anything. And so it gave me the opportunity getting back into college of, I had a season. I mean, I've been here for the last 20 years and I was never a club coach since I've been here. So I spent about 20 years, I guess, as club coach, but I'm not a club coach here. So even though I ran a camp and lessons and had to run the pool in the summertime, I was still able to have a lot of time with my daughters during the day and during the summers and that kind of great stuff. And you get breaks, like Thanksgiving break, we don't have classes, the December holidays, that kind of deal. So it really gave me the opportunity to be a part of their lives, and I must have been okay because they still let me be a part of their lives. So that's okay.
No doubt about it. All right. Are you ready for some quick fire questions?
I don't even know what that means. What is
I
it
know,
like?
I knew, I knew, I knew you, I knew you for that.
You're doing this year, and you know.
All right,
stuff.
you ready? All right, here you go. This is the first one. You got Phillies tickets, Eagles tickets, 76ers tickets, or Flyers tickets. Where are you going?
Oh, damn. That's a tough call. I probably go to see the Eagles.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Philly's a football town. You know, we love our Flyers. We love our Phils. Now we love our Sixers because for a long time there, they really sucked eggs, you know. But we bought into the process.
True or false? Pat's is the best Philly cheesesteak.
False. False. It's the most well known. You know, John's pulled pork. I like those. You know, there's a lot of great Philly cheesesteaks there. What is the one of the primary ingredients, Mike? See if you learned your lesson. What is the primary ingredient to a Philly cheesesteak?
I would say shaved steak, but I don't know.
No, it's ribeye, by the way. It's not shaved steak. But Amorosa rolls, man.
Oh, yeah. You know, I think I heard of that the first time from Coach Bernardino.
Yeah, Dino knows his stuff. If it's not on an Amorosa roll, then you're eating something else. You might as well just throw steakums on there or something like that, man. And of course, with or without. What does that mean?
With cheese or without?
With cheese whiz. Cheese whiz.
Oh, wit.
Yeah, with whiz or without.
That Delco accent. Yeah, I get it. So let me ask you this.
What's that?
Whenever I went into your office, I'd see all those pictures of some different national team trips. What was your favorite national team trip?
Ooh.
Bowerly did tell me about the whitewater rafting that you guys did together.
He is such a, oh my God, what a great guy. It's not just because he's from the center of the universe, you know. We went to in 91, we went to the World University Games there. And, you know, it started out that we went down to Tampa Bay for, I don't know, 3 or 4 days before we went over to England. And they put us in this high-rise thing that was they built it for the World University Games, but it ended up being housing apartments for that kind of thing. And in our room, first of all, there's no shower, man. And you had the water thing, you know, and a tub, you know, which, to be honest with you, is the first time I ever did that in my life. And I roomed with Bill Wadley. You know, Bill was a coach in Ohio State, and I don't know how it worked out that I had it. Him and I had a room to ourselves. But Jay Fitzgerald was the head men's coach, and Karen Moe Thornton was the head women's coach. And what a great staff! I mean, Susan Teeter was on it, and Jay. I always said Jay, but Jack was on that staff, and Alex Braunfeld, a tremendous coach, he was on that staff, and Brian Lee from I think it was from California or Hawaii, one of them two things. He was on the staff too. Well, Brian, Alex, and Jack had a room together in the same room, you know, and they had the beds next to each other. And but we had a ball. We had an absolute ball, all of us, you know. I was getting married right after that was done, so I wanted to get my wife a special gift. So I had Karen Moe Thornton and Susan Teeter went with me to shop. Oh, that was a great staff. I loved it. I mean, I liked all the staffs, you know what I mean? The distance camps that I went to, you know, Mike was on there, Jack Simon was on there. I was the IM coach. I wasn't coaching the distance swimmers, but it didn't really matter, you know. So Cindy Gallagher was on that, and she was in Paris with us with the what do you call it, the national junior team thing, you know. And then the other national junior team that I went on, that was so great. That was another great staff. I had JT Tremblay on it, and what a crack up he was. And Harvey Humphreys, Jack's assistant. Harvey was absolutely insane, I mean, he really was, but they were a lot of fun too,
I can imagine.
Yeah, I had a lot of great times, during that period of my life, a lot of great fun, there was this, the Olympic Festival. You've heard of that, right? So the Olympic Festival, where they take the best 16 and under girls and best 18 and under guys, and you have a draft, and you draft your swimmers, right? So the Ed Spencer was, I think it might have been the very last Olympic Festival. It was out in the Air Force Academy, right? And Ed, things got going in Nashville, and he had to step down from it. So Mike Unger was in charge of that at that time, and Mike called me up, and I was still coaching with Dino, and I went out there, and well, I had Brent Rudemiller, God, I pray for him every day. What a fantastic guy Brent was, or is. I should say that. Well, Brent was doing the picking, right? So Brent, of course, comes from Arizona. So the team, it was the North team. It was like every kid was from Arizona, And we had another guy on there, Townie Brewster, who was the late Jim Wood's assistant coach at Berkeley Aquatic Club. And Townie was psychotic. I mean, he was just so much fun, So we made it a plan, because every team, Northwest, South, and East got a van, right? So Townie was the culprit to this, but he brought Brent and I along, that we wanted to have the keys to every van, at the same time. So we did that. We had the photographer hurry up, take a picture, because one of the managers running over, and we were like dangling. It was a great time. So I mean, those things were great. I'm sure everybody had those kinds of times, but I was blessed to have so many good cats on those trips with me. It just made it for so much fun, and it carried over into the swimmers too. I mean, it was great.
Exactly right. That's a great staff, that gets along and has fun, and it's great that you share that, because it's such an important aspect of our sport. Next question is, will the women's 800-meter freestyle in Tokyo see that 8-minute barrier broken?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think they're going to break it by a lot more than you anticipate. They're all champions. They're all champions. I mean, all those, they've had just such a career of success, and, representing your country, especially the greatest country in the world, the United States of America, representing your country gives you that last extra little bit of juice.
I love it.
I've never seen a national team not like overachieve, and we're talking about world record holders and things like that, I mean, it's always been that way with the United States.
I love it. Absolutely. Do you think it will take a sub 20-second performance to win the men's 50 free?
You're asking me a sprint question?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought this was about distance, and I am, but I don't see why not. I mean, there's never, ever been a time where you can say, oh, that time is just too fast. And as soon as you get it out of your mouth, somebody's breaking it. You know what I mean? Times, coaches are smart. The science to the swimming is getting more and more sophisticated. The athletes are, getting stronger and better, and, more, I guess that's the talent, right?
No
More
doubt
mental,
about it.
I won't be surprised. I shouldn't say that, you know what I mean? But I mean, somebody's going to do it, and chances are it's probably going to be an American. So
I like it. Let me ask you this. What are your thoughts on the ISL?
I think it has its place. I mean, they'll find the formula to make it successful. I mean, I don't see any reason why our great swimmers should stop, and it's well deserved. You know, any kind of compensation that they can get, it's well deserved. You know, I like watching it. I think it's fun. A lot of bells and whistles there, man. You know what I mean? So,
You
but
got
no, I think it's here to stay, and I think it has its place, no doubt about it.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing something that we've never seen, for years and years and years. It was, the post grad, and now it can be professional.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
Hmm.
I took up all of your time because I told you I'd try to keep it 45 minutes, but we're at 65. But let me take the time to embarrass you and tell you how appreciative I am, how grateful I am. You took a lot of chances on me, man. You took a lot of chances on me, and I put you in some pretty tough situations at times. But thank God I had you, because you straightened that path.
No, I
Um,
appreciate that, Mike, but you were a keeper. I mean, you knew what was going on. You came from good stock. Your mom and dad, Martha and Neil, they're really the saints. They got a fast track to heaven, Mike.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to the St. Lawrence University Athletic Department for letting us borrow Bob today. And thank you to Carol Clemmer, who she's the magic behind the Clemmer family. I know you agree. And a supportive wife in this business is so important.
Wasn't for her, it'd be a big smoking crater. We all know it.
Well, Coach, all the best of luck to you this coming season.
Thanks,
Look
Mike.
forward to connecting.
Sure.
On behalf of me and all of the alumni from St. Lawrence who swam for you, we are forever grateful. And this episode of the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner will be available on Spotify, YouTube, and our website. We're going to have it up either later tonight or early tomorrow morning, so you can look for that across all of our social media platforms and at www.fitterandfaster.com. Coach, thanks so much.
You bet, Mike.